Welcome everyone on this nice Sunday. Oh, it's quite nice outside. Yeah. Just to start off, some announcements. We have, as you see outside, there's a table there with lots of crafts that our Carol and some of the craftist team have put together.
Crafting girls.
Yeah, and items for sale if you guys want to get anything. There's some t-shirts, some bags, some masks, and some knitting things, and just you can take a look, take a peek up there, just to help us out with our regular expenses that we have here. And to start off, I'll just randomly pick a text from the book The Way, the Truth, and the Life from Francisco Xavier, and the text is 69, and it's entitled Communications. And it's from a passage from the first epistle from John, chapter 4. And it says, "Dear friends, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see if they are from God." And Emmanuel then brings us an interpretation, telling us that when they take part in groups that communicate with the spirit world, new disciples of the gospel are usually very eager to establish clear and perfect communications with the afterlife. If they often seem to fail at this goal, if their experiments are unsuccessful, it is because that in most instances such inquirers are far more interested in their personal self-interests than in the spirituality constructive imperative. This purpose of exclusiveness opens the door wide to deceit. Malefactors with noxious instruments may pass through it and enter the sacred place because such a disciple has shut his or her eyes to the horizon of eternal truths. Beautiful and human is the strengthening of the bonds of love that unite incarnates to the loved ones who have preceded them on the journey beyond the grave. But it is unacceptable for beginners to expect those who serve them as parents or siblings to intervene in their personal affairs. There will always be someone who dispenses light during gatherings of sincere individuals. However, preparations to receive such assistance cannot be organized very well by people who are often unaware of their own needs. Consequently, the apostle suggested that disciples not focus on the physical person who is speaking, but on the essence of his or her words in order to tell if the spirit visitor has really come from God. So this was an interpretation from Emmanuel around communications, especially talking about beginners. Welcome. So we're now going to bring our thoughts and our feelings together through some prayer before we start off with today's topic. So if we take a deep breath and relax our thoughts, relax our minds, arrive here in the present, We elevate our thoughts into our Master Jesus, asking Him to guide us all here today, to guide our hearts, to open our hearts, so we can hopefully learn from Him. We ask Jesus that You may bless our meeting today, help us with conversation, exchanging thoughts and feelings, so we can all grow together in community and in communion with You. Thank You, Father, for the opportunity of us being all here, gathered here today. And we hope and we ask that Your light, that Your love can be more and more instilled in our souls, in our hearts, from here on. So be it. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Great to see you all here today. This is September, so September we like to bring talks around suicide, and we always talk about cherishing life. So cherishing the life that we have. One of the ways of cherishing our lives is through suicide prevention. So talking a little bit about it so we're more aware of it and we can identify it either within ourselves and friends and family and so on and so forth, so we can all help each other out. Specifically today, we'll be talking, and hopefully this becomes more of a conversation around mental health and the feeling of gratitude. So we have suggestions from Carol and Sonia from before to bring this topic, and it's something that it can touch our hearts quite a bit when we talk about gratitude. It's something that we can exercise on a daily basis. And to help us with this talk, we're bringing passages from the Gospel, a couple books from Joanna de Angelis called Gratitude, or Psychology of Gratitude and Surrender to God, a little passage from the book Man's Search for Meaning from Viktor Frankl, and the Spirit's book, our first book there from our Spiritist doctrine. And you'll see a lot of the slides from today I've been using in the past couple of months, so you might have already seen it, especially this first one here, if you want to go. This one here is around linking Spiritism to what Christ came to teach us, specifically on a passage from Paul, when he told us in the first letter to the Corinthians, he said, "And if Christ has not been raised, our preaching is useless, and so is your faith." So if we think and reflect a little bit about this passage, Paul is telling us that if Christ hadn't shown us that life exists after death, and that He's able to resurrect, so you're able to come back into your body, that you're able to reincarnate. If those two things hadn't been shown to us by Christ, nothing would have made sense. He said preaching would have been useless and faith would have been useless as well. So this key artifact, or this key knowledge about life after death and reincarnation is key, so we can make sense of everything that Christ has taught us. Which is why Spiritism can bring so much content and so much comfort to our hearts, because the center of it is talking about life after death and talking about reincarnation. So it just brings a lot of sustenance and a lot of basis and a lot of reflection around those two topics. And as a result, we can make a lot of sense of Jesus' teachings, Jesus' words with these two topics. And we bring this when we're talking about suicide because it's something that can help us have some reflections around suicide. One of the books that you can find in the bookstore there is called Suicide Falls Solution, which revolves around the fact that whenever we commit suicide, we're trying to make something stop. We're trying to hopefully get the pain to stop or the situation that we're in to go away. But as we'll learn with the life after death, that the death doesn't end our life. We can realize that if we're trying to escape from a situation through suicide, that situation still goes on. Which is why we say that suicide is a false solution. It's not bringing a solution to anything. On the contrary, it can make it even more tougher, especially in the beginning. And so that's the main reflection that Spiritism can bring around the false solution of suicide. Why we shouldn't go down that avenue and perhaps think about something else to solve the issues, right? And that's why we brought this passage, right? Just to basically bring not only knowledge but bring sense to what Christ has taught us. And a couple things that we want to talk about today is the fact that we are not alone. Especially when talking about suicide, it's really important for us to realize that we are not alone. Even though we might think we're alone when we're in dark times, thinking that there's nobody around, we have no friends, Jesus is always there for us. God always loves us unconditionally. Welcome. And so we are not alone. And to illustrate a little bit about this, I was going to play a song, but I'm just going to read the lyrics. Again, it's a song I brought a couple weeks ago as well. Basically to show us that Jesus never gives up on us. Regardless of how many times a day we give up on Him, He will never give up on us. Regardless of what we do, regardless of what we think, thoughts that we have, the feelings that we have, He will actually never give up on us. And to illustrate this, I like a singer called Jason Mraz, and there's a song from him called "I Won't Give Up." And there's a few words from this song that I like to bring here today. And if you want to close your eyes and think about that song, go for it. I basically want you to picture Jesus saying these words for yourselves, for all of you. You can picture Jesus saying these words, which are the lyrics to the songs. So he says, "When I look into your eyes, it's like watching a night sky or a beautiful sunrise. Oh, there's so much they hold." So again, picture Jesus saying these words to you all. "And just like them old stars, I see that you've come so far to be right where you are. How old is your soul?" It's reflecting how much we have already done in our lives, how far we've come. And then Jesus telling us, well, I won't give up on us. Even if the skies get rough, I'm giving you all my love. I'm still looking up. And when you're needing your space to do some navigating, I will be here patiently waiting to see what you find. And lastly, because even when the stars, they burn, some even fall to the earth, we've got a lot to learn. God knows you're worth it. And I won't give up. So, these lyrics, to me at least, they bring a feeling of love. They bring a feeling that Jesus will never give up on us. They bring the feeling of hope, that even though we might go our own way and do some navigating, He'll always be there waiting for us to come back with open arms, never giving up on us. So this feeling of hope, this feeling that we are surrounded by love from Jesus, is hopefully a feeling that we can carry through our talk today as we are discussing about suicide. And it is a very sensitive topic because it talks a lot about mental health, and these are thoughts that we might be having right now, we might have had in the past, we might have in the future, we might know somebody who's had it. or we might have actually committed suicide in past lives. We don't. Most of us don't know that, but if we are, that we have this feeling of compassion, of love, when we're talking about these topics. So, yeah, from Jason Mraz. And to give some light on the fact that Jesus never gives up on us, Paul, who we always like to bring as examples for us, and again in the letter to the Corinthians, he told us that no temptation has overtaken you except that is common to mankind. Meaning that whatever temptation we go through, whatever tribulations we go through life, they're never unique, that nobody else has had a similar situation. So that brings us the feeling that we're not alone. Right? Even though we might be going through tough times, somebody else is also going through tough times, might be very similar to the tribulations that we're going through. So no temptation has overtaken us that's not common to mankind. So we're not alone in the moments that we're happy, in the moments that we're sad. We have a shared experience amongst all of us. And then he goes on to say, and God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. There's a song in Portuguese that says that God never gives us a cold that's bigger than our blanket. Meaning, we'll never be tempted with something that we can't bear. And that's why God is faithful to us. We can trust Him that we will never go through a tribulation that is bigger or exceeds our capabilities of overcoming them. And again, this is Paul telling us this. So he went through a lot of tribulations in his life, and he was able to overcome them all, again, because he was always seeking communion and seeking help with Jesus. And then he ends by saying, but when you're tempted, so when we are tempted, which is daily, He will also provide us a way out, that we can endure it. So He will give us the tools, He will give us the inspirations, He will give us anything we need to endure it, to go through that temptation and to overcome it. So these are words from Paul that, again, can give us hope. And if we are having thoughts around suicide, if we know people who are, right, these words, they can give us some, it can be a beacon of light, showing us that not only are we not alone, but there is hope, that we can overcome whatever it is that we are going through, and we can trust God that whatever we're going through is for our own benefit. And please interrupt me, and I really hope this becomes a conversation. At one point I will be asking questions to try and engage a little bit more. It is a topic that sometimes brings us down a little, so I'll try to make it light. And as an example of suffering, I always like to bring a book called Men's Search for Meaning from Viktor Frankl. He was an Austrian psychiatrist who was in the concentration camps in the Second World War. And not only is it a memoir of describing how he was, but because he's a psychiatrist, he also brought a lot of reflections and patterns, because he was, not only was he at concentration camp, but he always was living it through the lens of a psychiatrist. So reflecting about the behavior of people, seeing what was happening to them, and trying to draw some conclusions around human behavior. So in this book, at one point he said that, all the hunger, all the humiliation, all the fear that they were going through, all the anger at the injustice that they were subjected to, they were rendered tolerable by closely guarded images of beloved persons, by religion, by a grim sense of humor, and even by glimpses of healing beauties of nature, such as a tree, such as a sunset. So, you can, I guess we can't really imagine a concentration camp, but in that sense, they were trying to strip a person's of their own identity, right? It was the environment was pretty bad, and he was saying even with all the anger, humiliation, fear, and the hunger, all of that was tolerable by small little aspects of life that we can find hope, that we can find love, that we can find joy, such as looking at a picture of somebody we love, having some faith, a smile, having a laugh, looking at a tree or a sunset. That was enough to make them keep going. That was enough to give them hope not to give up. And we can see how small these things are that we tend to take for granted on a daily basis. Right? We have all of this. Sunset, we're surrounded by trees. Religion, we're here today. How many pictures do we have on our phone of loved ones that we take for granted, right? But when we are in tough times, those small little things can be enough to give us hope and to make them and to help us endure what we're going, which is exactly what Paul told us right here. Right? He said, but when you're tempted, God will provide us the things that we need to endure, which Viktor Frankl told us, that those small little things that God provided these people were small things, such as a loved person, picture, religion, or even a tree or a sunset. So, just a reflection about what are the things that we have created in our lives that we now think that we really need to be happy, to find hope, compared to these small little things when we're restricted from everything else.
Sorry.
Yeah.
He says how this makes such a difference between the people there that survived. Of course, there might be some illnesses that they couldn't overcome, but how, like, compared to people that all of them were there, how come some of them made it through and others just kind of gave up or let it go? Because that's his observations, right? Like how having these things would make a difference on the people that survived and overcame and were able to leave the camps. And it is interesting because sometimes we don't realize, we just don't, we think, oh no, just because someone is stronger, this or that. No, but having that faith that something is waiting for them, or having that faith, not necessarily a hope or faith, that there's something else, not necessarily in a different world, but like when they need, there's something waiting for them, made a difference, right? So
absolutely,
it's a very powerful book.
Yeah.
I don't know how the concentration camps he describes quite well, and I'm sure it's nothing even compared to the reality. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, he says that those that gave up he could see that at that point they lost hope. Yeah. So that just brings us the reflection of how important hope is, and all these small things can give us a lot of hope. And since we're talking about mental health, I would like to thank Luis for some of the slides. This is from his presentation a few years ago. And we'll be talking a little bit about mental health. It's something that we have come a long way, I would say, at least in this community that I can speak for. I can't speak for everywhere else in the world, but at least the one we're living right now here, we have come a long way from talking about mental health, from being aware of it. We still have a long ways to go, but we have already done quite a bit of work. So it's really good to talk more and more about mental health. So why is it so important, right, to talk about our mind? And when we're looking at our spirit's attributes that Emmanuel brings us, he says to remember what are the three attributes from our spirit that lives on, basically. Three things that make the spirit attributes that we can experience through our lives. There's three of them. And
I'm trying to remember.
There's three. It's usually a triangle that we like showing. So there's three. One is our thought, one is our feeling, and the third one is our will. So we think, we feel, and then we have the will to do something, to act. And this doesn't belong to our bodies. This belongs to our spirit. Our thoughts, our feelings, and our will is something that is within our spirit, and just as a result, it moves it moves our bodies. So that's one of the reasons why it's so important for us to talk about our mental health, about our mind, because that's where our thought, our feeling, and our will lies. So basically, everything that we do starts here. Right? So if this is not feeling so well, then everything else will escalate from that. And we did talk about there's still a bit of a stigma around mental health, and that's hopefully by being more aware of it and by talking about it more, hopefully that stigma can slowly dilute itself. And the reflection that I always like to bring is, if you sprain your ankle, you have no problem going to see a physiotherapist to help you with that ankle. Have no problem sometimes taking some pills to help with the pain. But when it comes to our minds, and our minds are not doing so well, there's still sometimes some stigma around seeking help, or even going to a psychiatrist and taking some medicine to help us out. There's still, for some people, there's still a bit of a resistance to take that step. Whereas, if you break a leg, if you break a foot, there's no shame in going to see somebody to help us, right? So hopefully we can get to that stage where we treat our minds with even more importance than our bodies, and we seek help as soon as we start feeling any notion or glimpse of anything that could show us that we are not in a well-balanced mindset. Which is why Joana de Angelis, who is the spirit that writes through the medium Givaldo Pereira Franco, in the book Surrender to God, she talks about depression quite extensively, and she actually gives us a few tools to help us identify it, be it with our own thoughts, be it with thoughts of our friends and family. So she says, just to give a little bit of knowledge to us about depression, she says that, when we start to feel discouraged, when we have insomnia over and over again with conflicting thoughts, when we experience indifference to our affection. So when we are indifferent to the ones that we love, when we are constantly in bad moods and having negative feelings, when we have indisposition to do activities that we used to like in the past, when we are feeling irritated, when we want to isolate ourselves from social aspects, those are all signs or indications that we could be perhaps in a depressive state. So it's very interesting and good for us to be aware, again, so we can identify it within ourselves and then seek help, be it with a friend, be it with a family member, be it with a therapist, whatever it may be. Right? But at least detecting it from the first signs is really important, and it can help us get through it a lot easier than if we wait for it to get deeper and deeper. Again, it works very similarly to any other body part. If you sprain your ankle and you don't do anything, that pain will just keep growing and growing until it becomes tougher and tougher to heal. But the pain that we feel when we sprain something is pretty instant, so we can't really ignore it. Our minds require some reflections for us to realize what we're feeling. And if we do encounter ourselves in this stage, again, thank you, Louise, for the slide, we can talk about finding some relief. And this is what Alidu Tsekerafidu, who is a member of the Federation of the State, the Spiritist Federation of the State of Mato Grosso in Brazil, is also a psychiatrist. he talks about finding relief in these times of troubles and tribulations that we find ourselves in every once in a while. And he describes 3 little things for us to help us cope. He says the first one can be the willingness to recognize our weakness. And this is talking about being humble. That we are willing to scan ourselves, that we're willing to look at our weaknesses, not even recognizing them, but just to be willing to look inside, to realize that, we are not perfect. We do have quite a few things for us to work on. So just be willing to do it is the first step. Second one, he talks about identifying those weaknesses, right? Honestly identifying the weaknesses that we have within ourselves. And once we identify, many of us would go to a state where we might, what's the best word to use here? When we identify a weakness, we might not like us as much anymore. We are feeling, what's the word that I'm looking for?
Ashamed?
Ashamed, thank you. Right? When we see some of our weaknesses, we might feel ashamed of them. And that's why he talks about changing ourselves in a very lovingly and a very welcoming way. So whenever we see our weaknesses, that we welcome them, because they're part of us in this incarnation, right? If we're trying to constantly fight it, and we're trying to fight with ourselves, and in a fight with losers and winners, there's no place for losers and winners when we're trying to change our own selves.
When we don't want to accept they are ours, right?
Exactly. We don't want to admit the things and the weaknesses that we have. So welcoming ourselves is something really important. And I see, is it there? Oh, okay, it is there already. So the 5 different virtues that now Alidu suggests that we start working on, so we can go through this change in a very lovingly and welcoming way, are those 5. He loves to talk about those 5 virtues, and we talk about them constantly here at FSS. It's your self-love, your self-acceptance, your self-confidence, your self-validation, and your self-respect. Valorization, sorry. Anyone wants to take a stab at any of them? What do any of them mean? Self-love, self-acceptance. Anyone that you might have seen in the past or you have a deep appreciation for?
I said self-love, usually, because we think a lot about accepting ourselves, and well, not a lot. It's an exercise.
Yeah.
I mean, self-love is something that is aside lots of times, and it shows us how important it is for us to preserve ourselves in sometimes tiny situations. Like you cook a meal and it doesn't go that well, and you're like, oh my God, you're so stupid, you're so distracted. You start to make all these bad feelings, all these bad comments in your mind about yourself. And it starts from there, right? With little things that you can maybe embrace and change that feeling. And I think about self-love all the time, because it's such a good exercise to preserve your thoughts, goes to a positive thought, and it's your root, it's you, right? That has to be recognized and rich. So yeah, I think we shouldn't take for granted self-love.
Shouldn't take for granted. Thank you, Carol. Absolutely.
I agree with Carol, and this is a virtue that touches my heart so deeply. Self-love is a virtue that I've been studying a lot, trying to put in practice in my life, and I think that it's very sometimes we mix it up. What is self-love? What is really go through all these steps, or when we are trying to indulge ourselves.
Yeah, that's very true.
Right, when we think, I love myself, so that's the reason that I don't want to do this or don't want to treat somebody else because this person does that with me, so I love myself, so I don't want to go through there, I don't want to deal with this person, I want to raise this person of my life. So you're not really practicing the self-love, you are going to that pathway where you're trying to cover, like protect yourself using the imperfections, like the ego, the pride. So it's very it's very similar, these two words, but it's the self-love is when you really understand that you are imperfect and the other person is imperfect as well, and you have this indulgence as a virtue, meaning you understand that we are all imperfect and we are trying to be better, and then you use this virtue that is very important in order to find relief, which is humility.
Yeah, because instead of you, right, Sonia, instead of you exercising compassion with others or empathy, you're encouraging selfishness, for example. Or I don't want to talk to you anymore because I love myself, so I don't want this, right? So
Exactly.
it's a thin line. You have to really understand what self-love is.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Those are really good reflections, especially to talk about this fine line between self-love or the egotistical love that we can have for our own self. One of the definitions that Elihu brings around self-love, which to me speaks quite well, is the fact that he says the self-love is when we utilize our time to develop our virtues, utilizing the divine laws. Meaning, every time we're doing something to develop our virtues, and any time that we're using the divine laws in our lives, that is an act of self-love towards ourselves. So, coming to the center, praying, reading something from Jesus, having a relationship and taking the high road, things like that, utilizing the divine laws within our lives, that is an act of self-love, because we are improving ourselves. We're creating virtues within ourselves, and that is an act of self-love. Then he talks about self-acceptance, which Carol has talked about it as well. It's accepting who we are today, not the person that we want to be, but that accepting who we are today is it's not putting conditions to accepting us. It's like, I'll accept myself when I start doing this, or I don't know, when I start speaking French, I'll be happy with myself. You're not putting conditions to us accepting us, which is one of the things that we talk about, God loving us unconditionally. He puts no condition to his love to us. Then why should we? Why should we put conditions to loving ourselves when God doesn't? So that would be around self-acceptance. The self-confidence is being confident that, like Paul said, being confident that we have the power to overcome the things that we go through life. That God gives us all the tools that we need to overcome our own limitations, our own weaknesses. And this is more the confidence around building our morals, building our virtues, not so much the confidence of accomplishing something material or becoming president or something. It's the confidence around the ability of us to develop our own virtues in this lifetime. Please interrupt me if you have any suggestions or comments around these. These are all virtues that we can daily practice. Self-valorization, it's realizing that just the fact that we are living here, we are worthy of love. We can value ourselves just because we are sons and daughters of God. You know, we are heirs of the universe. We were created by the same God that created the universe. So we are worthy of love. And the last one is self-respect. Respecting us through this entire process. Respecting that it takes time. It takes time to build a virtue. It takes time for us not to be, for us to start being humble, for us to start being serene. It takes time, right? We might be feeling calm one day, might be anxious the next. Again, respecting ourselves through this learning journey that we go through. And something that's really interesting, when we practice all these with us, when we practice self-love, respect, valorization, confidence, acceptance, when we start practicing all of these with us, then we can do the exact same with others. Then we can love others, we can accept others, we can treat others with respect, we can value others, we can trust others. Because we've practiced that with us. It becomes a very true feeling to move to other people as well. And those can all help our relationships or our journey. It makes our journey a lot smoother to go through.
What does Alito always says, Victor? We cannot give what we don't have.
Perfect. If we can't love ourselves, we can't really truly love somebody else, right? Absolutely. And as we're talking about mental health, as we're talking about suicide, extending a helping hand. So let's say that we reflect about ourselves. Let's say we're not having some depressive feelings, but others might. Right, around us, family members, work, and things like that. So the first step, right, is what we're doing here today, is being aware, is learning a little bit about what leads to suicide, what leads to depression, some of the signs that we can take, especially around us, if some signs, increased intake of alcohol or drugs, feeling of helplessness, people losing the sense of purpose in life, feeling a lot of anxiety, unable to sleep, withdrawal from friends, family, and society, acting reckless, or having dramatic mood changes. These are all could be indications again of some sort of a depressive state. So first of all, being aware. Second is reflecting about it. Are we going through any of this? And also, is anybody around us going through this? Because it can help a lot when we talk to somebody about it. There was a misconception that, I don't want to talk about suicide with somebody because I might give them the idea of committing suicide. Well, that's not really the case. Everybody knows about suicide. We won't be putting an idea into anybody's head when we talk about it. Actually, on the contrary, opening ourselves up to somebody that might be going through this can help them open themselves to us. Right? It's really, a person that is going through this would be really tough for them to come to you and say, I'm having suicidal thoughts. Let's have a conversation. So it's a lot easier for us to get to them and open that first door. Take that first step. And then they'll realize that, they're not alone. There are people around them that are willing to help. And as far as talking and as far as having that conversation, these two feelings, such as empathy and compassion, are key to lead that conversation in a loving way. That we're the empathy here would be trying to, first of all, knowing that none of us is immune to these thoughts, to these feelings. And so we don't want to put ourselves in a pedestal or distance ourselves from them, right? We're all vulnerable to these feelings. So having that empathy of believing when they tell you that they're feeling angry or they're feeling depressed, don't try to dismiss it, but believe in what they're saying. That's an act of empathy. And then compassion. Treat them with love and also do something about it. Be it with a talk, be it with a prayer, put their names in our irradiational list, whatever it may be. But do something to help. And that's around extending a helping hand to a friend, to ourselves, to a family member, and so on. That is highly recommended, and it's something that, like I said, we've come a long ways, especially in our society now. There's quite a bit around mental health. There's quite a bit of encouragement to have that conversation. So it's good to have this from all aspects in our lives. And so, shifting gears and hopefully build some hope now that we've talked so much about feelings that are a little bit down. Hopefully now we can start to build some hope and talk about gratitude, which is something that Carol suggested, and Sonia has given us some reflections about it. Because João de Angelis, again, who is the spirit that brings us many books through the mediumship of Divaldo Pereira Franco, she has a book called Psychology of Gratitude, when she says that gratitude is one of the deepest and most significant feelings because it is not limited to the act of habitual reward. It's even bigger because it brings satisfaction and it has a psychotherapeutic effect. And that's why we brought gratitude, specifically that word, because it has a psychotherapeutic effect. It can help us get through times when times are tough. It has that effect in us. And it can be quite instant when we feel gratitude. It can help us instill, it's kind of like an injection of hope in our hearts that can help us lift our spirits during that time. That's why it has that psychotherapeutic effect. And she says it's one of the deepest and most significant feelings. And the beauty of it is that we can practice, we can actually exercise it. It's something that we don't have to wait for it to happen. We can make it happen in our lives, as we'll see a little bit more. She says that, therefore, everyone who is grateful, who understands the meaning of real gratitude, enjoys spiritual, physical, emotional, and psychic health. Because he feels joy in living, he shares everything, he's an active member of a social organization, he's creative and jubilant. So again, this is all like the results and the consequences of feeling gratitude. When we're feeling gratitude more and more, she talks about how this brings us spiritual, physical, emotional, psychic health. That's one of the consequences of gratitude. And again, it's part of one of those tools that God can give us when we're going through tough times. And it's one of those deep and significant feelings that we can create within ourselves, as we'll see a little bit more. And the last paragraph in that chapter that she's talking about gratitude is the fact that we can develop it. Again, we can train it, we can practice it daily, and we feel good when we do so. So it just motivates us to do more and more. Feeling the gratitude within ourselves. She says that, give thanks for the good that is enjoyed as well as the bad that did not happen. Right? So whenever something good happens, we can feel grateful for that good thing that happened and also for the bad thing that didn't. But then she goes a little bit further to say, and particularly when it does happen, so when the bad thing does happen, still try and feel gratitude. This might be a little bit challenging for us, but knowing that this is advisable helps us hopefully try it. She says that when something bad does happen, do the same. Still try to feel grateful, because only what is necessary for our spiritual growth happens to us. So if something tough is happening within our lives, is because we have something to learn from it. We will be able to extract something good from it. So it's not all bad. That's why she's saying it can provide us spiritual growth. That's why we're going through it, which is programmed by the law of cause and effect. So again, it's something that can bring us an opportunity to learn. So in that alone, we have, reason to give it thanks, to be grateful for what's happening. Again, really tough to do, but not impossible. Something that we can train ourselves. And I remember having a conversation with Sonia, and she brought us this reflection to us. So please interrupt me if I interpret it wrong. But we wanted to look at gratitude as a consequence of a series of steps that we go through life, as opposed to purposely trying to be grateful for something. We can look at gratitude as well as the consequence of some of our actions. And this is what we talked about a little bit. If I got it wrong, Sonia, please let me know. But it starts with the apprentice feeling. So when we start to develop this apprentice feeling that Jesus has invited us to do, which is that feeling of seeing the things that we go through life as opportunities for us to learn. Literally being apprentices of life, seeing things, seeing our situations as opportunities to learn. When we have that feeling towards life and make efforts to follow the divine laws, like we talked about earlier, when we utilize the divine laws to help us make decisions, our conscience, and this is something that Andrea Luis brings in the book Between Heaven and Earth, I believe it's the 9th book in the collection, chapter 18, he talks about how when we do something that is in line with the divine laws, our conscience approves it. So the action that we take, our conscience says, check, yeah, that was a good, it's like our conscience giving us a pat on our backs. Why does he do that? Because as the Spirit's book tells us, all the divine laws, they're housed in our conscience. So when we do something that goes in line with the divine laws, our conscience approves that action, and as a result, we feel happiness. So the happiness that we feel is the result of our conscience saying, yes, good job. And when we feel happiness, as a consequence, we feel gratitude. When we feel happiness and we're humble in heart, like Jesus tells us, gratitude becomes an outcome. Like we don't have to make efforts to feel gratitude. When we're feeling happy, then that exudes gratitude. We look up and we thank God for having that happiness, for feeling good, for feeling peace, or whatever it may be. So it becomes a result. It becomes part of the whole process. And all of this can help us develop so many different virtues, right? Feeling gratitude can help us be humble, realizing that, we're feeling good, not because of something that only I did, but I'm feeling good because God gave me the opportunity to be here today, to have these actions, and so on. It can give us a sense of serenity and calm. When we feel grateful, we don't really want to change anything around us. So when we don't want to change things around us, there's no reason for anxiety. So we feel calm, we feel serene, we feel hope. Right? Whenever we feel gratitude, and in the movement of gratitude is when we're thanking God for giving us something and for allowing something to happen, we feel hope that, if He did it once, He's going to do it again and again and again. Faith is a great connection with God, right? We're thanking God for what we're going through. So again, solidifying that faith in God. Also the sense of belonging, the sense that we're not here alone, that it was a collective that helped us feel happiness, feel gratitude, that it's a community where we help each other out, right? We can never make it alone, and that's why God gave us all our brothers and sisters to help us through it. And there's many more. Anything that you can think of an outcome or a good feeling that you feel, or a virtue that you feel when you're experiencing gratitude. What's anything else that you can think of? And Sonia, please let me know if I didn't quite get your reflection the other day.
Of course, you got better. Much better than I was, that we were talking about, and that's circle. It's so important because give us this faith in ourselves as well. And we go back to that 5 virtues: the self-love, self-acceptance.
Yeah.
Like all those 5 virtues makes total sense because we are developing the virtues inside of us. We are receiving the approval from our conscious. So that makes us feel this sense of belonging is so important too, because we feel that we're not isolated. We are not here abandoned, and we have this feeling of God's son, God's daughter. This is so important because we feel protected. And then we have that feeling that Viktor Frankl describes. We start giving value to little things.
Little things in life. Yeah.
In life.
That's true.
And we feel this gratitude more and more and more.
That's true.
It's wonderful.
Thank you.
And I think the circle also reminds us how connected all the virtues are. And all the virtues are so powerful, but it's important to remember how if you start exercising one virtue, can take you to another.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you. And the one reflection around the conscience approves our actions. This doesn't mean that we got it right. So let's say we're trying to do something, and we tried our best. We try to do it in a way that is aligned with the divine laws, but we failed. We didn't really reach the goal that we wanted. We can still, our conscience would still approve that action. So our conscience approving our action has nothing to do with the fact that we got it right or we got it wrong, but that we try with the divine laws in mind. And regardless of the result, whether we failed or whether we got it right, we can always learn from it. And again, that connects to the apprentice feeling, so the cycle keeps going. We can still feel happy even though we didn't get it right the first time. And to end with Jesus, just like we started, especially again when we're talking about suicide, there is this passage that we all know, or a lot of us know and love, which is from Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 to 30. When Jesus tells us, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened." And I want to stop there for a bit. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened. So Jesus, so many years ago, he was already bringing the aspect of mental health and recognizing when we are weary and burdened. There's no shame in saying that we are weary and burdened. He was pretty open when he was inviting us. So when we are feeling weary and burdened, come to him, because he will and he can give us rest. He says, "Take upon my yoke and learn from me." Learn from his teachings. We don't know it all. There's so much for us to learn still from him. Why learning from him? Because he's gentle and humble in heart. And this is something that we're all strive for. So why not learn from the person who is gentle and humble? And we can find rest. Because his yoke is easy and his burden is light. So that's ending with a passage from Jesus that can touch our hearts tremendously. It's an invitation for us to accept ourselves. Right? All you who are weary and burdened, accepting us, accepting that we are weary and burdened. There is no shame in that. You can see those 5 virtues: self-love, self-acceptance, self-value. We can, do a whole talk around finding those virtues in this invitation from Christ. And knowing, especially when we are going through tough times or having tough feelings, like Shiko said, that everything passes. And if there is one certainty in life, is that things will change. Things will get better. And that is all we had today. So thank you for your comments and participating. It's a topic that's a little sensitive to touch on. So thanks for bringing good spirits to it. But any other comments or questions? No? Thank you.
I have a comment, and I've been thinking since it started, when you start talking about how there's still stigma around mental health. And we can always say, oh, because some people don't accept, but how do we feel when we have someone in our lives that is going through mental health? Could be us, but it could be someone else. Or how do we see when we see someone in the streets that are showing these difficulties? So it just make me think like we can't change the world by itself, but we can change how we deal with things too. Because it's easier say, oh, I'm going to be compassionate. But am I really seeing that person as a person with the same potential that everyone has, created by God with the same potential? Or am I passing judgment? Or maybe I don't want to get involved because it's not easy to live close to someone who's going through mental health issues. And how are we contributing for this, to break this cycle of a stigma? Because as you said, like if I break a leg, I'll go to the hospital. If my son breaks a leg, I'll take him to the hospital. But if I'm showing, or someone in my family showing some signs of mental health issues, do I immediately look for that help, or do I try to I don't know, let's deal with this, and then if it doesn't get better, we go. Right? So
exactly, it's hard to sometimes admit or accept, right?
It is, yeah.
Absolutely. But knowing that we can overcome it, knowing that there are tools to help, can hopefully help us accept it, because we know that we can still live with it and get better. So thank you all. And we're going to end in a little prayer, and then we have our passes over there. We'll be inviting you if you want to. So I invite you all to close your eyes and elevate our thoughts to our Master Jesus, who told us to accept ourselves as we are today. In fact, He already accepts us. So we ask Jesus that you help us accept us the way we are, and inspire us to lovingly change us, developing our virtues, developing our love, our compassion, so we can feel some gratitude, some hope, some warmth in our hearts. And thank you for the opportunity of being here together with so many hearts. And we ask you that you help us through the week, that you can inspire and help us to come to you when we are feeling weary and burdened throughout the week, so we can find rest for our souls. Thank you again for your light, for your inspiration, for your love. And may you be with us forever and ever, never giving up on us. So be it.